I was on the beach, like sitting on the beach in my journal and writing again for the, millionth time, it seems, that I ate too much last night. And I actually got on the phone right then and there, called 2 different therapists. One didn't answer the phone. The other one, I left a message. Within 2 minutes, she called me back. I started a journey with a therapist. This wasn't my first therapist, probably my 4th or my 5th. But this one was different because every other therapist I worked with, I was trying to impress.
Welcome to The Shift. I'm Amy Pechacek, and today we're tackling the silent tug of war so many of us fight with our own reflection. My guest, body image advocate Anne Poirier, spent 3 decades chained to perfection until a knee-cracking wake-up call set her free. Together we'll unpack body neutrality, the science that makes diets backfire, and a simple good gift versus bad gift mindset that rewrites self-worth in real time. Stick around for our Insight Wildcard, a lightning question that reveals the moment Anne discovered her voice really mattered. And let's dive in. Anne, will you tell us a little bit about the journey that your life took to get you where you are today? Someone who is a body image expert, advocate, you've authored books around body image. What led you down the path to start doing this work?
Well, it's a lifelong struggle with body image is what led me to what I do today. And it started really in elementary school, with some really small experiences that I took on as being I was not good enough. Like my body wasn't good enough. My body was not right. I needed to change my body, just little comments from other kids or even from parents that just make you think that something's wrong with you. And so because of that, when I went into 7th grade, I really just kind of bottomed out with just not feeling like I could fit in. And in that precious age, of 11 and 12 and 13, when that's all you want is to fit in, I was not feeling like I was fitting in. And so I basically started a diet. I just started to not eat. And I spiraled myself into an eating disorder that lasted 3 years through 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And my mom, God bless my mom, and she really helped pull me out of that. And I got some help, but because of when this was, there weren't any eating disorder therapists. And so I got enough help to kind of keep going. But this haunted me my whole life, this body image space. And it even led me to do what I did for a living the first part of my career.
Which was?
A fitness instructor. So I went to school for phys ed, and I thought, well, if I'm a fitness instructor, I have to stay in shape. I have to keep my body looking the way people expect it to look and what society expects. And unfortunately, I stayed there for 30 years, longer than I should. But that was where it became more destructive than helpful. You think you're doing something healthy, and we've talked about this. You think you're doing something healthy until you're not. And it crosses over that edge. And it was just one of those, life gives you those little moments, right? Where you go, I got to figure something else out, because I dropped back into my eating disorder behavior a few times in my journey. And it really wasn't until kind of my body started to break down that I realized, I have to figure this out somehow. I can't keep going like this.
You said that your body started breaking down. Now, there's a couple of things in there. And the first one I would like to ask you about is what happened with your body?
When I was in college, I was playing soccer and I tore my ACL, so I had some surgery. And then I just went on continuing to pound away with high impact aerobics in the 80s. And just beating my body up. I did running. I was running marathons. It was all to control my weight and the pounding on my legs, that my legs couldn't take it anymore. And so I went to have some surgery. And this is kind of one of those moments too. I was waiting for surgery, and what they were actually going to do, and this, just the surgery itself makes me cringe that I decided to do this. It was actually to break a bone in my lower leg so that they could straighten my knee out so that I could continue to pound on it. Osteotomy or something like that was called. So they were actually going to break a bone so that I could continue to, run and jump and live my life and keep my identity. And it was the doctor came in, and it was about 3 PM. I haven't eaten. I'm his last surgery. And he came in, and it was so nonchalant. He said, well, if I get in there and your knee's too bad, I'm probably not going to be able to do this surgery. So we'll just kind of clean it up. And I knew from the moment that he left that he wasn't going to be able to fix my knee. It was like my life dropped out and my identity dropped out, because I knew that he wouldn't be able to do it. And then I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to do? I can't. Fitness is all I know. Exercise is all I know. What's going to happen to my weight? Oh my God. It's just a spiral of negative self-talk and then self-criticism. It all just came rushing back in. And obviously they weren't able to do the surgery. And so that was a real turning point for me to say, I got to figure out a better way. I can't go on like this.
So you did not have the surgery. What happened after that?
Well, coming out of that, I really took a better look at basically what I was doing. And I knew that I was still working in fitness, but I also knew that I had to start to change something, because my brain was still, there was so much self-criticism and negative self-talk. And I think that's what I kept rereading in my journal, morning after morning after morning, this critical voice, and then beating myself up, and then having too much to eat or too little to eat. And I think what I say is that I got sick of myself. I got sick of reading the same thing over and over in my journal, even after the surgery. And I remember I was on the beach, sitting on the beach in my journal and writing again for the, millionth time, it seems, that I ate too much last night. And I actually got on the phone right then and there and called 2 different therapists. One didn't answer the phone. I couldn't leave a message. The other one, I left a message, and within 2 minutes, she called me back. I started a journey with a therapist. This wasn't my first therapist, probably my 4th or my 5th. But this one was different, because every other therapist I worked with, I was trying to impress. I didn't tell the truth. And it was with her help and support, and then my own self-help. I dove into a lot of self-help for me, for my inner voice, for body image. I ended up actually going back to school for eating disorders and learned so much about diet and restriction and our bodies that I just was a sponge. And by doing that, I learned how to start taking care of myself. And then I just had this pull to, I don't want other people, especially this next generation, having to spend so much time and energy and money and negative brain space connecting their worthiness as a human being with their body or what the scale says or the size of their pants. And that's kind of where my journey to not only healing, but purpose started.
And I'm so glad that you took the time to become healthy and to learn all of this information, and that you made the choice to start giving back to this next generation, because it's still out there, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
it's still everywhere. people are consumed with image. Uh, and so tell me a little bit about how you decided to get into this space.
Well, I think it was for my own healing. It really was. I went back to school for eating disorders because I wanted to figure out why I have gotten stuck and what was that all about. And when I was doing that, I took a certification in intuitive eating, and that just was a different layer of information. And while I was doing that, I started to I took a certification in self talk. And then my mind was blown because now all of a sudden I'm thinking, it's my brain. I have more control over my brain, and I can make different choices, and different choices and decisions can lead me down a different path. So it was really education, and then diving into my own, self-help, and then writing. You and I have talked about writing and journaling and how helpful that was on my own healing journey as well. So it was a multitude of tools, and for me, just to get out of my own head, because I was tired. I kept remember repeating to myself, I'm just tired. I've had enough. I just can't do this anymore. I don't want to live this way. And I feel really, really badly because my kids grew up. I have two girls, and they grew up seeing their mom really obsessive. And now I try to role model differently, and I have a much better relationship with them. But I wish I had started my healing journey earlier when they were younger. Yet you can't, we can look back and just say, hey, I can role model much differently now. And it is so much harder, I believe, for our next generations because of 24/7 social media. And it
The Instagram
becomes,
world.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think it's even harder for kids and young adults to step out of this. It's just, I call it we're so connected. Our worthiness and our body is so connected, and just, I really want to pull that apart for people that are struggling right now.
Have you found that, or, based off of your lived experience, because I have, that before you get to the turning point of becoming healthy, which is a process in and of itself, but before that moment, that shift happens, did you find that you traded one, let's say, obsession for another? And I'll give you an example. So for me, there was something that happened in my life that led to an eating disorder in high school. And even though that eating disorder wasn't there 24/7, it would pop its head up in key stressful times throughout the next decade to decade and a half. I had treatment for that as well. And one of the main things that I was told that was that light bulb moment for me, and I was bulimic, but one of the things that helped me like stop that immediately was the therapist I was working with told me that if I continued down the path I was on, that I was going to rupture my esophagus, and it would happen. And that she painted this picture. I was going to rupture my esophagus. It was going to happen in the middle of the night. I was going to choke on my own blood. And because I was a single mother, my kids were going to wake up in the morning and find their mother, and that was the memory they were going to have. So that was the turning point for me. But then what happened was kind of like we talked about earlier. I became obsessed, if you will, with what I ate. And then I ran and exercised quite a bit. So even though on the outside it looked like I was doing something healthy, I believe that I was doing it to an extreme where it became unhealthy. And I know that you agree with that thought process too. And like people have different forms of this, right? For both of us, it was body image, but for other people, it's other things. It could be alcohol, drugs, drama even, but there's all kinds of things. But do you find that to be true, that until people truly get healthy, they replace one obsession with another?
Well, absolutely, because that's what we're trying to do is get rid of a feeling, right? Or a negative thought about ourselves or not feeling good enough. And we're trying to search for something to help us. And those I call, we can call them medicators, whether it's food or exercise or alcohol or gambling or shopping, right? Or work, right? Perfectionism and work. Those are all things that we seek, trying to be good enough, fit in, belong with people. So we're always trying to strive. And without pausing long enough to realize the damaging effects of that and really start to, and I think part of this work that I didn't think was part of it in the beginning is emotional regulation and being able to really start to see our emotions as data. They're good. They're providing us with information. How do we allow them and not try to shove them down? And that's what all types of obsessions and addictions help us do. They help us mask what's underneath that we don't feel good about ourselves, and that's what helps us continue to go forward. But we're still doing the same thing in just a different way. So alcohol, I used exercise, I used food, I used getting attention. So doing anything that I could to get attention, and that wasn't always helpful, right? So there was always a reach for what can I do next that I can prove that I am worthy. How can I continue to prove that I'm worth being here? And I don't talk about this much. It is in my book, but I was adopted, young as a baby. And sometimes I wonder, right? There's that little bit of not being wanted as a baby that probably had a layer for me of not feeling good enough. And that's what I see with all of the clients that I work with. There's some layer or trauma or addiction that has taken over due to this just belief system around. It could be around body, it could be around food, it could be around exercise, it could be around worthiness, and success. I think, hustle culture, it's another one that we're strive. And it's only when we can slow down long enough, take a deep breath, and to go, what do I really want? How do I want to show up for the people that I care about and the people that I love? And how I'm showing up right now is obviously not how I want to be perceived or seen or thought of, on my deathbed. Yeah, especially with my children, my girls and their families and my husband.
How does somebody know when they've gotten to the point of, let's say they are doing something that's healthy, but then what is that point where it turns from being healthy to being unhealthy? How do people recognize that? Or how do you help people recognize that in themselves?
It is when the thoughts begin to be destructive rather than helpful. Destructive meaning the exercise or whatever you ate or the drinking, there's such a pull that you can't separate it. And then you beat yourself up if you've missed something or if you blew it, right? They use the term blew, like I blew it. So everything else so it doesn't matter. It's the spiral that it takes to kick our self-worth. And then we keep reaching for something to find that worthiness. So I think it's when the thoughts become too overwhelming and you can't stop. The thought just takes over.
It's interesting you say that because back when I was healing from my own eating disorder, there was a book that was recommended that I read. I don't remember the title of it, but what I do remember is that they called the eating disorder Ed. Well, they used the name Ed as a first person. of course, for eating disorder, but they would talk about how Ed told me, that I'm fatter today than I was yesterday, or Ed told me that if I eat that, X would happen. So, it becomes like a first person, and it takes over, like you said, every thought. I remember walking into, restaurants, stores when I went shopping, church, anywhere that I went, to a party, to a family event, and comparing myself to the other people in the room, like
Mm-hmm.
comparing my body. And if my body was larger than theirs, then my self-worth would plummet.
Right. And that's the spiral piece, right? The comparison, the perfectionism, always having to make sure that everything is perfect, or when you go anywhere, even making decisions not to go places because a certain pair of pants don't fit. Well, so it makes a difference in kind of our experiences, what we miss in our lives due to, and I hear that all the time, people not going to graduations or not going to uh, weddings and parties and things like that because they don't want to be seen, or they're assuming that people are going to look at them a certain way. And if they go and that's in their head, that's what they're going to see, which is going to prove it even more to themselves that they're not good enough, or that their body is wrong, or that I need to lose more weight, or I need to exercise more. And that's where it becomes, like you said, obsessive, and we can't get out of it.
Do you think that the reason you're in the space that you are in, and say I'm in the space that I am in, is that obviously we have a desire, we have a heart to help other people, but do you think it's also, I mean, you said you got into this because of your own healing journey, and I probably did too, but do you think it's a way for us to continue our own growth? Do you think that's why we do it?
Probably. I probably think that there's some part of it that's that. I also think it is the pain that we've suffered and the knowledge that we've gained and the wisdom that we've gained, and how if we can help somebody not feel that pain or not go through those things, that's what drives me forward. I don't want kids to be on diets at 8 years old. Like that's that just sets children up for a lifelong of dieting and not feeling in, and which is connected to their bodies, which is connected to their self-worth and their self-esteem, which is connected to how they show up in the world.
What are some of those things that you teach that help people get out of this cycle, this endless cycle of that many people are in even today?
The biggest piece, there's two really main mindset shifts that I talk about, and these are the foundation of getting healing in this particular space. One is breaking free from diet culture and realizing the physiology around dieting and restriction.
How did they do that though?
They have to be aware of it, right? We have to see it. And then I know what helped me was to realize the science behind calorie restriction. To a certain point, our body fights us. And if we're fighting ourselves, we never can actually look the way we want to look with this particular, so the dieting model doesn't work. And that's what I think learning why that doesn't work can be the start of healing when it comes to diet culture. And I always use the example of how, the society, if you were to look at the weights of people in society, it's gone up over the past 50 years. Diet culture has doubled in the past 50 years, $89.9 billion. If dieting worked, like, why are we a bigger country than we've ever been? Those two things should not be going up at the same time. And so it's this learning how we can treat ourselves kindly with food and look at food completely different, not as right and wrong and good and bad. And so there's this separation or disconnection from dieting. I think one of the best decisions I ever made was to say to myself, I'm never going to diet again, period. And I'm not going to do it. And because of that, I was able to try to find a new way. And I got really angry when I realized that our body starts to fight us when we restrict calories. When we don't have enough take coming in, our metabolic rate drops. We have an increase in ghrelin, which is our hunger hormone, a decrease in leptin, our fullness hormone. So we're hungrier. We can't get full. Our metabolic rate is dropped, and we have a spike in cortisol, which puts us in our stress state. Cortisol signals the body to hold on to weight, feast and famine. It's a protection mechanism. It's for safety. So all of a sudden, as soon as you make a mistake, right? And you're like, oh, I've blown it. Your metabolic rate's now down, and you start to eat and you gain weight almost immediately. So it becomes that's why the yo-yo cycle. And we have to start to tune into our body, and connecting to what does hunger feel like? What does fullness feel like? How do these foods feel? It becomes a choice to say, yes, I'm going to have pizza, knowing that I'm not going to feel that great, or I'm going to retain water, or tomorrow I might be a little bit more lethargic, or you know what? I really don't want to have pizza tonight because I've got this and this and this tomorrow. So it becomes, once food becomes a choice, that makes all the difference. And then we can tune into our own body. And when intuitive eating talks about that, tuning into our own hunger, our own fullness, how do foods feel in our bodies? What does that even look like? Because for many, they are on a plan. I'm supposed to eat this at this particular time and this much. And once we stop listening to the body and start doing things told by other people, that's when we can actually physiologically, mess up our metabolic rate, mess up our hormones a little bit. Leptin resistance is something that a lot of people who have been on a yo-yo dieting pattern or having a great dieting history, so we start to kind of have some issues with our physiology. And
a few minutes ago you said there were two things, and so we've kind of discussed one. What's the second one?
The second one is just our mindset shift, right? To really start to notice our own inner dialogue. I love the way Brene Brown talks about it. She says, when we have our inner critic going, we are both the bully and the bullied. So we are bullying ourselves and we're being bullied. And if we take a look at any of the research around bullies or being bullied, you see anxiety, stress, depression, social isolation, pulling away, right? There's so much. And with our own negative self-talk, we keep ourselves stuck. And it impacts all of our choices and decisions. We talk what we think. It's that saying, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Yeah, it takes over. And so and I will use the example as a child. I was called, I had a nickname, the boys in the neighborhood, and they called me Annie Fanny Farmer. And now I look back and it's like, well, I guess that's kind of cute. But at the time, I just heard the Fanny part, and I pulled that in. Like, I have to change my body, I'm too fat. So the dialogue for me started, I'm too fat. And that's what started my eating disorder. The too fat, as soon as I took that in as almost like an identity, I could see it over and over and over again. You say Henry Ford, if you think you can, you think you can't, you're right. I use the example of a Ford red truck. If I'm deciding to buy a new red truck for my next vehicle, I'm going to start seeing them everywhere because I've placed that thought into my brain. If I've placed the thought that my body's not right, that I'm fat, that I need to lose weight, or that people are looking at me and look at, all of the judgments, I'm going to see it. I'm going to assume it. I'm going to expect it. And it becomes more and more solidified into our identity. And so it's understanding, how am I talking to myself? And what are some of the things that I have actually hindered my ability to move forward because I've kept myself stuck with the negative critic, and I haven't tried things because I don't want to be seen or heard or interpreted as stupid or any of those other kind of little phrases and self-talk that we have. And so the mindset is like, let me identify my critical mind, realize it's not going to go away, but we can start to change it. And how do we be more compassionate to ourselves, kinder to ourselves? Because the critic keeps us stuck in poor choices and poor behaviors. Self-compassion actually helps us to start thinking about problem solving. Now, well, that was, like I think about eating more ice cream than I wanted to. Well, you know what? It's probably no wonder that you ate more, because you had that phone call and that made you a little bit upset, and you've done that before. It's no wonder. So, what would you do next time? Let's take a look at what you might do next time. So now I'm already problem solving instead of beating myself up and making myself have to go get rid of it in some way, right? Or beat myself up and say, I'm not eating tomorrow, right? Then it spins into punishment, self-punishment. Awareness of our negative self-talk helps us to see what's keeping us stuck and what can help us move forward.
So, Anne, we've talked a lot about your journey, mine, what people can do to understand, or what people can do to take action to be healthier and to eat intuitively and things like that. But what can people do who have young children? So, parents, caregivers, teachers, whoever, loved ones, what can they do to get in front of this for young people before it even starts?
It's a great question. And I think what we need to do ourselves is role model differently and check our own social biases and check our own understanding around, learn more about nutrition and food, really understand, like, what does it look like to eat in front of a child and not be talking about good foods and bad foods? What does it look like to look in the mirror and go, man, these pants look good on me? Or, a different language for ourselves. So it's role modeling behavior. Exercise is fun and movement is fun. It's not, doesn't have to be a chore, and it's not about numbers. Self-care is important. So taking steps to role model ourselves to make sure our next generations see that it's okay to, yeah, you know what? I think I need a nap right now, and to take care of ourselves versus pushing through and always being exhausted and can't do anything, or dreading going to the gym, or dreading having to, eat certain foods. So it's really trying to take a step back in our own behavior, and because kids see everything. They notice everything. They notice the way we talk to ourselves. So it's all of those pieces: self-care, self-talk, movement, joyful movement, intuitive eating differently. So it's kind of putting all those things together.
The types of food that are readily available, I also believe that, a lot of people who are, now that we have two incomes families, and this isn't going to encompass a lot of information, but you have two parents working, or you have a single parent taking care of kids. And so a lot of times they're just going to buy and serve their children whatever's easiest, whatever's fastest, whether that be McDonald's. Nothing wrong with McDonald's sometimes, as Anne says, but not all the time, right? But there are some people who that's what they feed their kids all the time, or they're constantly feeding things out of a box. How do people find that balance between the sometimes always, and between the extreme eat every single bite on your plate, or the extreme only junk food? how do they balance that with people who, what do they call them? Crunchy moms. So, the country mom sounds like a great thing, but it can actually backfire and have the opposite impact on kids. How can they find that balance?
The mostly sometimes concept is really a good way to start with this, to think about number one, I understand busy families and having things convenient. There are some better options, right? Nutritionally better options. The key here is awareness. We have to be aware of what's happening with our own eating behavior and our own eating choices and decisions, and work with our time, how much time we have, understanding how some of the ultra processed foods are affecting, our bodies, tuning in more to how we actually feel when we're eating particular foods, like you had already talked about. So most of the time, can we most of the time be eating this way and then sometimes having those treats as opposed to the opposite? And so it's starting to choose and find some different types of foods that your family, number one, enjoys and likes, so they're satisfied with it. That because that's a big part of this. I think that's a really big question, and each family is going to be very different. But it starts with awareness. Awareness is the first success of trying to make a change. When it comes to tuning into our fullness, what does your body feel like? Are you full right now? Okay, you don't have to eat anymore. And a lot of times for parents, putting on a different types of food on a plate can be helpful to give a child more autonomy and more choice. If food is pulled away from the diet as a child, we tend to look for it elsewhere, and I understand this because of our industry now and because of the food industry. How do we just try to look at maybe a little bit better choice? And how does this feel in your body? And asking those questions with our kids. How does that feel? And noticing possibly their own behavior after eating certain foods. What does that look like for you as the parent or the caregiver or the teacher, seeing what children are eating and how does that impact their behavior? Because it will, as you said, impact how we feel if they've fallen asleep in the afternoon classes, right? Or they run into the bathroom. Like, do they have energy? Are they hyperactive or feeling, can't sit still? So connecting a little bit more about how food impacts our bodies and our behavior as well.
All right, Anne. So you started this movement, the body neutrality movement, and that phrase or that term has picked up a lot of movement nationally, maybe globally. Can you tell us a little bit about what that movement is and maybe how it got to the point where it is today?
Well, on my own body journey and my body image journey, when I was specifically working on how I felt about my body, we were in the midst of the body positivity movement. And I wasn't really feeling very positive about my body. And so the term body neutrality just crossed my screen and crossed my radar. And I basically jumped on it. And I said, that is something that I need. That's what started my own healing. And this was back in about 2015 when I was just, I was starting to develop, I was working through my eating disorder program, and I was working with the body image, and I wasn't having very much luck with the body image piece because it was, you have to love your body. You have to feel really good about your body. And I just wasn't in that spot. And so this term body neutrality basically is taking the focus away from appearance and putting the focus on function and our body's function and what our body does. It turned down all those loud critical voices about my body, and it kind of turned up the volume on what my body does for me every single day and all the amazing things that it's done for me in the past. And so as soon as I started to focus my attention on those things, my body became this amazing vessel that I, woke up in every day. And then thinking differently about my body impacted how I felt about myself, impacted my choices and decisions. And I'm like, there's something about this. And so it's been picked up a lot recently, probably the last 3 or 4 years. It's picked up much more steam. And I believe it's for the same reason. We can't always go from a place of hating our bodies to a place of loving our bodies or even really liking them right away. We have to kind of it's a bridging, right? It's this bridging from body hatred to body love. And what does it look like for me to start appreciating my body and seeing my body for the amazing things that it can do? So that's what body neutrality is about. And why I think it's taking up so much steam is because I believe people are tired too of trying to always step into body positivity or feel like they have to love their bodies, or it takes the pressure off.
And is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience today that might be helpful as they go along this journey?
There's one other thing that's kind of tied to body neutrality that has really helped a lot of the clients that I've worked with. And it's another kind of mindset shift and a way to think about things differently. And it's called the good gift. I call it the good gift, bad gift theory. And when we get a good gift from a friend, we almost subconsciously just take care of it. It's just, whether it's a sweater or it's a painting or, a journal, it's something that we really appreciate, respect, we take care of it. It's almost it just happens. When we get a bad gift, after we say thank you, it is, and what were they thinking maybe, but it just disappears almost, right? It goes into the bottom of a closet. Maybe we re-gift it. Maybe we take it to Goodwill or it goes in the trash. Like, it just kind of disappears. And I think about that in regards to our body. If we're thinking about our body as a bad gift, if we're beating ourselves up all the time and we don't like the way we look, or we're taking action to punish our body, that's almost subconscious. How are we treating ourselves if we think of ourselves as a bad gift? And how might we treat ourselves if we start to think of ourselves like a good gift?
What an amazing tool. Like, my mind just went all over the place with that. One of them is those good gifts we place a lot of value on. And some of those good gifts we will protect with our life, depending on what they are, who they're from. But you're right, a good gift is something that we truly value. And if we could see our bodies as a good gift and treat our bodies the way that we do those prized possessions or those great gifts that we were given, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wow.
And it's seeing our body like that. And for people that might have a really hard time seeing their body or the function of their body, I start with senses. What are your favorite sights? What are your favorite sounds? What are your favorite smells? What are your favorite, touches or feels? And we start to realize that our bodies, it's only through our bodies that we get to do any of that. It's only through our bodies that we get to share a story or share a laugh or hug a loved one. And it's starting to see the body in a whole new light, as opposed to whether it fits a certain size or looks a certain way. It's just really changing the perspective of our body. So when people have a hard time and trying to shift their mindset around their body, I can't think, I always try to say, is there something that you can think of that you like about yourself? And it's really hard a lot of times for people to think about that, especially when it comes to the body. So I start with, well, let's talk about your senses. What are some of your favorite smells? What are your favorite sounds? What are your favorite sights? Who are your favorite people that you like to connect with or laugh with? It is only through our bodies that we get to experience any of that.
That is
And really
beautiful.
trying to kind of, how do we just open our eyes to realize how amazing these bodies are?
Yeah, that is a huge shift in perspective, and it's a beautiful shift actually about the way we can view our bodies instead of just being what they look like, but understanding they're actually the vessels that help us experience all the good things in life, all the
Yeah.
love, all the joy, all the exhilaration. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yep. The
amazing.
hugging of our loved ones, all of those things. Yeah. It's really changes like you said, it changes the way we see it.
And gaining an appreciation of what it actually does. This is, I think, where we were actually. I'm going to tell you a story. It might be a little off, but I think it's really a neat way to explain to someone at a very young age how powerful the body is. So I have a 4-year-old granddaughter named Rainey who is like the light of my own life. And when she gets a bobo, she gets all upset when she gets a scratch or bleeds or something, and she would panic. And what I did was I started talking to her about how amazing her body was and how it had the power to heal itself. So I went on YouTube and I searched for kids' videos about how the body heals itself. And we sat there and watched, gosh, and I don't know, 12 different videos. And they weren't long, but about how the body, the blood cells go in and how the tissues get repaired and all of that. Of that. And so then for several days after that, she would ask to see some of those videos again. And now instead of getting a scratch or when she bleeds, we have that conversation. She'll say, Gigi, is my body healing itself? And I'm like, yeah, it is. And so we have that conversation. I would love to see that done for kids in other ways to help make this connection about appreciating how amazing our bodies are for us.
I know all of the little things that the body does. We didn't, when we were babies, we weren't born hating our bodies. We loved them. They were awesome. You watch babies and they explore their fingers and their toes and their thighs and their bellies. And um, so the good news is we learned to hate it, which means we can unlearn it. And by doing what you did, to share with your granddaughter how amazing this body is in its healing process, especially at that age, for her to realize, wow, it's not going to, like, I can imagine I can't remember that age, but I can imagine that sometimes that can look, not like you just got broken, right?
Right.
And to let our children know that they're not broken.
And that is a fantastic lesson to teach young people, I believe. So,
Absolutely.
all right, Anne. Well, we have a segment on the Shift podcast that we call Insight Wildcard. And what this is where we ask our guests, so every guest that comes on, we have 10 questions. And I'm going to ask you to pick a number between 1 and 10. And whatever number that you decide to choose there's a question that correlates to it that I'm going to ask you. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. What is your number, Anne? Pick a number between 1 and 10.
I am going to pick 7.
So question number 7, Anne, is when did you realize that your voice mattered and how did that shift things for you?
When did I realize that my voice mattered? When I actually shared a blog about my eating disorder. And it was my first writing experience. And I had people come out of the woodwork and said, me too, me too, me too. And because of that, I continued to blog. And then I went to a writing workshop, which strengthened my voice. And I said, I have a story to tell because of that writing workshop and because how people connected to the blog when I started that the way that I healed myself and the perspective that I now see around everything, around food, my perspective around food, my perspective around bodies and exercise, self-care, all of it. Mm-hmm. It was because I wasn't alone. And I knew that my past, right, was actually a catalyst for my purpose. And I needed to share my voice and share my experience and share how I healed.
I'm so glad you wrote that first blog. I've shared with you before, and I'm just going to say it now, that I picked up your book not knowing you were the author at one point when we first met. And I read your book in 2 days, the one that you wrote for young people, Not a Fat Annie, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I read Not a Fat Annie in 2 days. And it was so well written with such a great story. But I didn't know that you were the author of it. And we were visiting. And when I found out, it was like, wow. So then I decided to read The Body Joyful book that you also wrote. I highly recommend both of those to people who have not read them. I think that Not a Fat Annie is a great book for young people or people of all ages. And then anyone who is struggling with body image issues, then The Body Joyful is also an excellent read. And not only if they are themselves, but if a loved one is, right?
Right.
So a couple of things. Tell us a little bit about the book you're writing now. When, even if you don't have an exact timeline, when do you think it'll be released? And then after that, let us know how people can get in touch with you to work with you.
Sure. I am right now writing, and we had this conversation on body neutrality. I have created the Body Neutrality Playbook. So it's written. It's now being studied in a couple of different places for, does the way we see ourselves impact our behavior? And the Body Neutrality Playbook, it's activities and daily practices to unlock body confidence, self-acceptance, and inner peace. That's the name. That's the long name. And it's all of my tools and activities and mindset shifts. It's all of it in one place for people to dive into so that they can hopefully work through that and see themselves completely different on the other side of
I
doing
can't
that play.
wait for that. Sign me up.
So I'm hoping October is a really good month for body image. It's Body Acceptance Week is in October, sponsored by Netta. And so that's where I kind of keep my fingers crossed that will be when this playbook will be available. So, and then people can reach out to me at anne@thebodyjoyful.com.
Anne with an E.
Yes, Anne with an E. And then thebodyjoyful.com, you can go right there and you'll see my website. My website is called Shaping Perspective, so I don't want people to get confused, but the Body Joyful will take you there too. And Shaping Perspectives is really what we're trying to do. Shape our perspectives around the things that have got us caught and kept us stuck. So people can reach out to me there as well.
Love it. Well, thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for all you've done for me personally. You're making a difference, and people like you are so important in the world. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Amy, for having me. I so appreciate our conversation.